What is up, guys? Welcome back to yet another video. My name is Franco Torres, and today I've got a really cool video that I've been wanting to make for a while. I'm going to be comparing the Nano Cortex to the Quad Cortex. I've been a QC user for the past 2 years and a half, and ever since the Nano Cortex came out, I've been really wanting to have it on a board and mainly comparing it to one and the other. So that's what we're going to do. Let's just jump right into it. I'm going to do a B switching between them. The only difference between the two paths is that the Nano Cortex is going into the radial Pro DI2, which is a passive DI box, and then into the interface, whereas the Quad Cortex is just going XLR out into the interface. They're going to the same preamps that I'm using over there, so no difference in terms of like what you're plugging into. I'm now plugging one into the Apollo and the other one into the Focusrite extension. Just going directly into the Focusrite, and then that's going via ADAT into the Apollo. So let's listen to them and see what we find. And quite frankly, the answer may surprise you. So let's take a listen to that right now. So, okay, let me just hop on my phone. That way you guys can also see what we're using, right? Using the app, but I'm going to show you the screen. I'm going to screen record a little bit for you. So I pretty much went ahead and built the same channel and the same signal path on the Quad Cortex that I do have on the Nano Cortex. So essentially, same blocks, everything's going to be pretty much the same, just using, Neural DSP capture, which is what we have. We don't have any modeling on the Nano Cortex, but again, I'll do a separate video on the Nano Cortex. We've just got, capture for the amplifiers. We've got cab or IR. And we've got about 5 that are loaded into the Nano Cortex. And then we have 5 different effects, if you will. We've got the noise gate, which is pre. We've got the pitch shifter or transpose feature. And then post, or rather, after the amplifier, we have the modulation, delay, and reverb. For modulation, what we do have is the DC2W chorus, which, yeah, I mean, as classic as it gets, it's Boss style chorus. We've got a delay, which I'm not using. It's an analog delay. I'm not using it in this video or this comparison just because I mainly wanted to compare the amplifiers, and I'm just using the effects to add a little bit more to that. And then for the reverb, we have the Mind Hall, which is, again, you can find all of that in the Quad Cortex. So I built 2 channels out. I'm not going to go 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. I'm mainly just going to do 1A and 1B on the Nano Cortex. So just 2, settings and going back and forth between them. What I am using to switch back and forth is the Earthquaker Devices ABY switcher. Super cool device, actually. But yeah, let's go through the settings. So we have the capture. We're using the British 2555 Rhythm 12, or the 12th capture of that specific capture. Yeah, pretty standard. I went ahead and added the same settings on the Quad Cortex. So this one's pretty simple. I just did everything at noon, the level a little bit higher up to kind of like match the volume with the high gain channel, which is the second comparison. That's that's wild. That's freaking wild. So after editing it a little bit over here on the QC, I can, get a little bit closer, but it's a little bit of a drastic difference on this one. The cab, we're using the 412 British TV 69, which is the third one on the Nano Cortex. And then a little bit of noise gate, a little bit of chorus, like I said, and the reverb. Now for the second channel, or the high gain channel, which is the one that quite frankly impressed me, and I was not expecting to, have so much of a difference between the two. And I'm quite frankly, I'm a little bit confused as to why. If anyone's watching this and they know and they've noticed that and they have an idea to why, please drop it down in the comments, because I, quite frankly, I'm really confused as to why that was happening. Because it's the same capture, right? It's supposed to sound the same. I did check in my global settings on the Quad Cortex, and I often do have like a global EQ on it. But even with the global EQ, the settings on the clean channel were pretty much the same. And because I'm just really EQing just like a little bit. And I did turn it off afterwards, and it was still quite different with this capture at least. So yeah, if you have an idea, please drop it down in the comments, because I'm super confused about it. For that capture, what we're using is the PV505 Signature 7, same one on both of them. For the capture, we're using the 412 CA standard OS a B30, so just B30s in a 412 cabinet. And then we're using the noise gate and a little bit of reverb. Same settings, absolutely. Like, I went into everything, same settings, and for my surprise, the Nano Cortex had much more gain on those settings than the QC. Not sure if that's like a global volume type of issue on my end, or like if there's anything else that I was doing wrong. Obviously, you can get the same kind of tones on the QC versus the Nano Cortex. You can, like, absolutely on any setting you can absolutely get it. But I was really surprised that with this particular capture, there was such a big difference. To me, that's just insane. I'm gonna go ahead and take this off over here so I can just talk to you guys. But to me, that was insane, right? The fact that in the same settings they sounded so different blew my mind. I did, go ahead and edited the Quad Cortex and got it to sound really similar. At least with that capture, I can absolutely get that same tone from the Nano Cortex and the Quad Cortex. Because that's the sound on the Nano Cortex, to me, that kind of distortion is what I normally use anyways, right? So the fact that it was easier for me to get that in the Nano Cortex than the QC with, a specific set of with a specific set of settings, that blew my mind. I'm really blown away with it. I think the Nano Cortex is a really cool pedal. I'll talk about it more in depth in some other videos, and we'll kind of like go back and forth with them in more videos to come. But I'm really impressed with the Nano Cortex. I really like it, and I think it's definitely got a really unique spot in the market in what it's doing. Especially when you compare it to stuff like the Tone X1, like the Helix, and some other pedals, which I've actually got the Tone X1. I haven't had the Tone X, the bigger one, but it's pretty much the same concept, same sounds as the Tone X1. Do have the HX Stomp, and at some point I will compare them all and do shootouts and do more videos on that. So if you're interested in that, feel free to subscribe, shameless plug. But I'm really impressed by the Nano Cortex. That's probably going to be my go-to for when I've got smaller gigs or acoustic gigs. anything that I don't necessarily have to, bring my big board or anything that I can do with a couple pedals, right? I'll just bring the Nano Cortex. In fact, this board that I built is around the idea of kind of like getting all of the sounds that I can get on the Quad Cortex, but in separate pedals, because I've had a lot of pedals for a while that I've been, kind of like working on this board. So, mainly built it for fun, but quite frankly, if I am going to go out, I can use a small board or just use the Nano Cortex and a couple other pedals and pretty much call it a day. I don't think that there's anything that I cannot do in terms of like, obviously in the scenario with pedals. Let's kind of like, reiterate that the Nano Cortex is not the same as the Quad Cortex in terms of what it's got built. But if you come with the mindset that the Nano Cortex is not the same as the Quad Cortex, you're going to be impressed by it, right? Now, if you think that it's going to be similar to like an HX Stomp, you're quite frankly not going to like it at all, just because it's mainly just an IR capture device with a couple of effects to pretty much have anything that you need for for an easy gig, right? We're not talking about doing a bunch of like rotary effects with a bunch of delays and heavy washes and your reverbs and all of this kind of stuff. That's not what it's for. That's not the user that the Nano Cortex is for. It's mainly just for like the user who has a bunch of pedals. They don't necessarily want to commit to the Quad Cortex or to like a massive unit like a Fractal or a Helix. You just want to have a better IR at the end of your chain, or like a cab sim at the end of the chain. And I mean, it's not a modeler, it's a capture device, which is again pretty darn cool for what it is. Yeah, I'll leave it here, because if not, I can keep on rambling for minutes and hours. So I'll leave it here. I'll do some more videos on the Nano Cortex and on the Quad Cortex. And if you're interested in any of that, feel free to subscribe, comment. Hopefully I'll see you guys on the next video.